My name's John, and I live in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. It's a town I moved to in 1985, went to the Marine Corps, and decided to come back after graduating. It's a great little town. My mother chose to move here a couple years ago when her husband passed away. She loves the area, loves the majority of the people, except for she has bullies for neighbors. I'm asking anyone that's on YouTube if you have any suggestions on how to help my mother, let me know, because I've run out of ideas. Just to give you a few examples, I've spoke to other neighbors and they tell me that you can go a mile in every direction, and these people have bullied their neighborhood for decades. My mother moved into the neighborhood, and these people will pull up to the vacant lot they own next to my mother's house, and at 10 o'clock at night they'll shine their headlights into her window and just sit there, revving their motor and shining their headlights into her window. My mother tried to sit out in her backyard with her friends, and this bully will pull over and she'll put her truck in park facing my mother and her friends, and she will sit there and rev her motor as if she's going to run them down in their backyard. Her son will stand in front of my mother's property with a sledgehammer in his hand and just hammer his hand, staring at my mother's front door. Now, we've talked to the police. I've had a few police officers tell me these people are crazy. But the police officers say there's nothing they can do. They're on their land. They could put up a football stadium if they wanted to, even though this is a residential area. They could put up a football stadium. There's nothing you could do. They haven't broken the law. Neighbors across the street from them, I've spoke to them. I spoke to the wife. Sweetest couple, sweetest lady that you've ever met. I've heard this, the greatest couple that you've ever met. The bullies don't like them. Why don't they like them? Because they're black. Every time, the lady told me, every time that they would go out in the past and they would get in their swimming pool, the bullies would come over and they would start a bonfire right there next to their property. The bullies are on their property, but they would start a bonfire within 5 minutes of these people getting in the pool. That way the smoke would carry over and smoke them out of their own swimming pool. They couldn't even enjoy their own backyard. My mother, she can't enjoy her own backyard because if she sits back there, they terrorize her. They'll start a fire which carries over, or they'll sit there in their truck and they'll rev it up and act like they're going to run her down. I had another neighbor I spoke with, and he told me that every time he would put something out in his front yard, if he was trying to sell a motorcycle or a truck or an appliance, anything, he'd stick out in his front yard and put a for sale sign on it. Within 5 minutes, they would go by and they would allow their dogs to urinate on his property, and just thought it was funny. They enjoyed it. I've had people tell me that they went and told one of their neighbors that he needed to move his truck because his sun was reflecting off of his truck into their window and they were trying to watch TV. And instead of drawing the blinds, they told that guy he needed to move his truck. They've told me, this is our town. We decide what's going to happen. They've told me, that street's named after me. This is my street. Now, I've sat down and I've talked to law enforcement. I talked to Wes Blair, Chief of Police, the City of Cape. He told me to have some of these neighbors call him. I spoke to a couple neighbors and they were tentative because they did not want to have these bullies mess with them again. They go in shifts. They'll mess with one neighbor, then they'll leave him alone and go to another one. And they just terrorize each neighbor a little at a time. The Chief of Police said, have someone call me so we know this isn't one-on-one. I had one of the neighbors told me he would be happy to call him. And even I did a follow-up. He said he did call him. The Chief of Police verified that he had received a call, but he had not spoke to him. He was going to call him back. He told me, I will call him back. I spoke to that neighbor here last week. The Chief of Police never called him back to talk about this. This same neighbor used to have an antenna, ham radio antenna, outside his house. These people didn't want him to have a ham radio antenna, so they shot it. They shot his property because they didn't want him to have it. Nothing ever got done about this. This has gone on for decades. I've talked to Scott Meyer, city manager for Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Scott has told me, I sat down and met with him. My mother and I met with him back in October. He told me, we'll look into this. We'll dig in, we'll see what's going on. Scott Meyer, I've met with him probably 4 times. My mother's met with him 3 or 4 times, and he's never been out to the property. He's never followed up on it, and he keeps telling me, I'll look into it. My mother bought this house under a neighborhood stabilization program. She's 59 years old. She doesn't have the money to sell. If she sells her house, she has to pay the city a certain amount, that tens of thousands she doesn't have. Money that she doesn't have, she has to pay them back. She has to pay them, for this property. She doesn't have the money to move. She loves the neighborhood. She loves all the people except for this one bully. Bullies that the neighbors say, you should be scared of them. My mother's scared of them. We watched one of the guys throw his drink at an officer, and the police officer did nothing about it. I told that to the chief of police. There were 3 witnesses that watched him throw his drink at that police officer, and that police officer was scared. The man's 6'5", approximately 355 pounds. This officer's about 5'6", 5'7", and he was scared. What is my mother supposed to do when you have a police officer that has a firearm, has his mace, has his stun gun, and he's afraid of someone? I'm asking for help. If anybody has help, any suggestions, please let me know. My mother doesn't want to move, but she is scared. Cape Girardeau is a great little town, but I need to get some help. And even if my mother does move, where does that leave the other neighbors? Now they're still sticking with these bullies that no one's doing anything about. They've been there for years. When the police department tells you they're crazy, what are you supposed to do? When the city hall tells you, yes, I hear they are bullies. They try to bully us too. What are you supposed to do? If you have any suggestions, please help. Thank you.